Hey there, it's Dren here again. Another Ghost Notes, this time talking about creativity. A lot of what I talk about in these videos is specific creative ideas that you can try in your music and sound design and your implementation, and it's all a means to an end for creativity. So that's kind of the way I'm thinking about this. I've been reading this book that my wife got for me, this Rick Rubin book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being. And it's a fabulous book, and I just wanted to share some of the ideas that I'm taking away from this. I'm only halfway through it, and it's affected me so much that I thought I'd share some of the main points that I've taken away so far. So here's 3 main points that I've gotten from reading this so far. The first idea is one that's not new, especially if you've studied anything about meditation or read any of David Lynch's books. He has that book called Catching the Big Fish, Catching the Big One, something along those lines, which is just about collecting ideas, getting ideas, putting yourself into a state that is welcoming creativity, that is welcoming ideas. This first idea is kind of along those lines. This idea that there's always this creative energy flowing somewhere. It's transmitting somewhere. And we just have to find a way to put up our antenna and tap into it. Prepare yourself for tuning into that creative energy wherever it is around you. I know it sounds a little kind of weird, right? But I think if you're a creative person, you understand what I'm saying. It feels like you're channeling something. One of the metaphors that he uses is kind of this fishing metaphor, that you can't catch any fish if you don't drop the line in. Prepare your line, drop it in the water, and be patient. It's kind of like catching these ideas. You have to prepare yourself for it. You have to drop the line in the water. Another metaphor that he uses is if you're looking for this information to get to the creative spot or to find the creativity, it's like the sun. The sun is always there. Sometimes the clouds obscure it, but the sun is always back behind those clouds. So sometimes you just have to attune yourself to see where the sun is, to see where those ideas are. But it's always there. They're always there. And that's sort of a comforting thought, that the ideas and the information that you're seeking is always there. You just have to get yourself into the right frame of mind to access it, I think is a good way to say it. Sometimes we're not in the right frame of mind to access that creative energy. So we need to find a way to see past the clouds sometimes. So that was idea 1. Idea 2 is the idea of, and I really like this one, submerging yourself in great works. I see this a lot with especially young composers or people who obviously haven't had a lot of exposure to lots of ideas and lots of great work. Exposure to great art provides an invitation. That's a quote that I just read off the screen here. That's from the book. Exposure to great art provides an invitation. So if you read, the example he uses is if you read great literature every day, instead of reading the news and you're just plowing through books, really amazing, great literature books every day, instead of reading the news, by the end of that time, you'll have maybe a greater sensitivity for recognizing greatness from reading those books. Once you start thinking about elevating your idea of art and only taking in great works, it'll apply to the friends you choose and the conversations you have and the thoughts that you are reflecting on all the time. And that will start to make a difference in the way that you approach your creativity. It just helps you distinguish good from very good, and then very good from great. I think that helps us determine what's worthy of our time and attention. We've got this infinite amount of data coming at us all the time, and we don't have the bandwidth to absorb it all, right? So we need to be a little more selective about what's worth our time and attention. What great work do we allow in when there's all this stuff flying at us? And it's not because we want to imitate greatness. It's more to calibrate our internal meter for what is great, for what makes great art. And when we start to calibrate our meter and level up what our idea of great art is, I think that has an effect on the art that we create. we level up our expectations of what we can do. We want to reach a higher level because of the art that we've been taking in and appreciating and seeing what's great about it. And when we go through the process of making a song or making a piece of sound design, whatever it is, all of the thousands of decisions that go into making that piece of art that you're creating will be guided a little bit by what you understand as being great art. I've definitely seen, say, like students that I've had in the past who have brought me something they thought was really great and it was really pretty mediocre. And to watch them kind of grow and learn what is something that's great and what to aspire to. It's important. And the third little point that I'll make from reading the book, and like I said, I'm only halfway through, and there's a lot of really, really great points. These are just things that stuck out to me as I was reading it. The steps in creating, like I've always had my own ideas about the way that you create something in these kind of steps and different phases that you go through in creating a piece of art. And he gives names to a lot of them, and I like the way that he does that. The first phase that he talks about is collecting seeds. And I think this is a great metaphor because this is something that I've done for a long time, where I'm just kind of letting those ideas come in and playing them and recording them and just getting them down and throwing them into my DAW and just recording things as fast as I can. Sometimes, like last week, I'm working on a new soundtrack, but I'm at the very, very beginning of this process. And the soundtrack is going to be very acoustic guitar based. So I would just go to locations that weren't here and like the beach and just get my phone out and record some of these ideas that would be coming to me. And there's no judgment there. This is not a place to make judgment about your seeds, about what they're going to turn into when they grow. You're just collecting them and you don't know what's going to happen with them. You just have to be non-judgmental as you collect these seeds. Great metaphor. And I've always thought about splitting the creative process into a point where you're just getting ideas, collecting ideas, and you don't want your editorial brain to get in the way of collecting those ideas because those two things don't work well together, at least at that stage. So you just want to collect the ideas. And then I've also thought about, okay, then you move into an editing, the hard part where you actually turn it into something. And then he calls that the crafting stage, where you start the hard work and it might at times feel like you're climbing up a really, really tall mountain to get to the top and see what that seed will turn into. But that's where your craft comes into play. And it's more about not inspiration, a little bit inspiration, but more also about what your experiences brought you to so far that you can see what idea is going to work and where it's going to work and how ideas fit together. If you created a lot of music and a lot of songs, you realize that there's a lot of unconscious, behind the scenes thinking going on that your brain does as you collect these ideas. And you'll start to see pieces fit together. And it's not uncommon for me to record a bunch of things and get even maybe halfway through a crafting process where I'm putting these together. And then I'll look at this part or something I never even really considered. And then I start to see how they kind of fit together. And I have to give my brain a little bit of credit that I had been thinking about this in a very subconscious way. And my brain had been working on something. And it just took me a while to be able to see what was happening. It's a really strange concept, I realize, but I think there's something there to that. Getting to understand how our brain does let these ideas come out into reality. So I find that very interesting. Anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest a little bit and just talk about this book a bit, because I think it's really important for people who are creative to kind of get a little bit of advice on about how to organize some of these different processes that we go through when we're creating something. It's fun to read about. There's some great advice in here. It's not a fast read, even though it's not hard to read, but a lot of the ideas are so thoughtful that you want to read them maybe 3 or 4 times before moving on, because there's a lot to absorb, not in a vocabulary kind of way, but in just a concept kind of way. So it's a slow read, but it's well worth it. I have a friend, hi Brian, who is reading this for the third time right now. So it's that kind of book, I think, that you can just keep reading and get something from it every time you go through it, if you're a creative type person. So I hope that's valuable. I hope it's interesting for you. I find the creative process to be somewhat magical, and I know that sounds silly to some people, but after doing it for a long time, sometimes there's no other way to think about it. It is a little bit of magic. So enjoy it. I am not paid to talk about this book. Rick Rubin is not giving me any money for this. I just think it's good. All right. See you next time, and we'll talk about some more oddball microphones, I think. All right.